I'm Jim LaPierre. This is Sober Now, and today's topic is why happiness is actually a pretty lousy goal in recovery. As always, would love to hear your questions and comments. Would love to hear what's going on with you today. Drop me a message in any of the streams that we have going. And if you haven't already been over to Sober Now's Facebook page, drop in real quick. Give it a like. You'll get notifications of future live streams and other content that we create. And with that, let's get into it. Little technical glitch here. Here we go. It's a common thread, and it's always amazing to me. I've worked with very diverse people over an awful lot of years in recovery from substance use disorder, trauma, mental illness, eating disorders, self-harm. And it's a common thread in our experience that sooner or later, most everyone I've provided support to is going to tell me, Jim, I just want to be happy. And I say, oh, is that all? Okay. Well, what do you need in order to be happy? And then that's usually met by a certain level of shock or surprise because we realize that in a very real sense, we don't know. As benign as the expression may seem, in my experience, I just want to be happy is most often a statement of self-pity, and sometimes it's a statement of resistance to the powerlessness that's in our life. We can't afford either of these. What we need to be examining is how we're thinking, how addictive thinking is a big part of what overshadows our efforts at getting better. I've been listening to people in recovery for a couple decades now, and I've learned a lot about how we use language and ideas to manipulate ourselves. I've learned that rationalization, minimization, and hallmarks, of course, are indeed the hallmarks of addictive thinking. And we know this. What we tend to be less aware of is how we use language to engage in self-deception and to express our needs in ways that aren't clear or that involve vulnerability. So the word just is something that I've come to treat as a red flag because we're using it most often either to justify something that is unhealthy or to minimize something. When we say, I just want, again, we're referring to something that we're powerless over, but more importantly, we're referring to it as something that we're entitled to. One of my all-time favorite Facebook memes gives a list of all the things that you're entitled to in this life. And we have this vernacular about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the States. And the pursuit of it is absolutely a right. But do we have a fundamental right to happiness? Well, I would say we're free to choose it anytime we care to. Happiness is typically a fleeting emotion, but I think it's a reflection of gratitude. It's a reflection of choosing to be open-minded, open to new experiences, open to making further connections and developing relationships and experiences, because in the end, those are what really matter to me. When folks talk a great deal about happiness to me, I'll encourage them to watch an old Will Smith movie, The Pursuit of Happiness, which is not a happy movie. It's a movie about struggle. It's a movie about hard work. And when folks tell me, again, that they just want to be happy, I'm saying, okay, let's go through and take stock here. I give them a homework assignment. I'll say, go home and make a list of everything that you do that is in your control that makes you unhappy. And for the folks who really have a willingness to improve their lives, to transform their lives, they'll do that. And they'll come back to see me the next week and they'll say, okay, here's all the stuff on my list. What do I do with this? And I smile and say, well, stop doing those. And it usually makes people pretty angry. But life really can be this simple. Notice all the ways in which you get in your own way. Notice the patterns in your life. Those are huge. Notice the cycles, the things that are in our control that perpetuate disappointment. Notice the expectations that you hold of yourself and others. Typically, we have sky-high expectations of ourselves and rock-bottom expectations of everyone else. Make changes accordingly. Happiness is a lousy goal because, again, it's an emotional experience. It's not a way of living. It's not something that we attain and achieve and then just stay there. It certainly is not a destination. I would say it's far better to choose joy. Joy endures. It sticks around. I also encourage folks to pursue things, of course, that are far more fulfilling. Seek satisfaction. Seek spiritual growth. Seek to expand your awareness, your knowledge, your skills. And then I'll also ask folks, what is it that your happiness depends on? Who does your happiness depend on? Is the answer to that question something that shows a lot of codependency? Is it something that shows contingencies? So, in other words, is your happiness contingent upon other people being and doing as we'd like for them to? Is your happiness dependent on the perfect love or the perfect partner? It's one of the biggest pitfalls that we dive into sometimes. I often tell folks a silly story about the movie Jerry Maguire. It's an older movie, but it's a classic romantic comedy. Boy meets girl, boy gets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. It's everything that's wrong in our ideas about romantic love and how partnerships are supposed to be. It's the illusion that finding the perfect love takes away past pain and suddenly transforms us. It's particularly nasty in a cis heterosexual lens because it implies that meeting the perfect partner is going to make one a better man or a better woman. So in Jerry Maguire, Renee Zellweger, we've come to the point of boy got girl back, and it's this sappy, heartfelt moment. And Renee Zellweger says to Tom Cruise, "You had me from hello," which is like, kind of gross, but okay, whatever. It's a romantic comedy. We expect that kind of crap. But Tom Cruise's response is especially horrible. He says to Renee Zellweger, "You complete me." And at that point, in watching the movie, I started yelling at my television, "No, she doesn't. That's not her job." This explains a lot of the suffering of my poor wife, who says things like, "Can't we just watch a movie without you being a therapist?" So it's always amazing to me how simple things are and how complicated we make them. It's always amazing to me that we want shortcuts to life, to the things that we most want. And the simple truth, in my experience, hard work is what it's about. Taking risk is what it's about. And I think perhaps the greatest and the most important risk is the willingness to be vulnerable, the willingness to meaningfully connect to kindred spirits, to people who are on similar journeys. A perfect partnership, first of all, doesn't exist. But even if it did, that would be like saying it's my partner's job and my partner's responsibility to see to my happiness. Ideally, in the course of our recovery, we come to have a lot of supportive people in our life. We get to have a lot of meaningful friendships and a lot of chosen family. And the simple truth is, relying on one person for your needs to be fulfilled is a setup for failure, both for you and for them. Good Lord, if I relied on my wife for all of my emotional needs, that would be like having 6 full-time jobs. Having a lot of needs does not make one a needy person. It makes one human. And the responsibility of getting those needs fulfilled is mine and mine alone. It's not my partner's job to just sense what I need and provide it. That's the hallmark of codependency. And for those of us who have survived trauma, it's one of the biggest pitfalls that we jump into. Because we have survival skills, we have strong intuitive abilities, and we can sense what it is that a person wants or needs or feels, and we can provide something to them without even being asked. And we do that quite readily But we do that with the expectation of reciprocity, that our partner or the person we're relating to will come to understand that we do these things for them without being asked, and what we really want is for them to do the same. And this transcends our traditional ideas about what codependency is. Your partner obviously is not a mind reader. They don't have the ability to just intuitively know everything about you. And the truth is, wanting to have our needs met without asking for them to be met, without naming what they are, is not only codependent, it's avoidance, it's a product of emotional immaturity. To be able to just come right out and say, here's what I'm feeling, here's what I want, here's what I need, is typically very uncomfortable for people like me. But what I've learned is that vulnerability simplifies. It takes away misunderstanding. It takes away all of the misconceptions and unnecessary conflicts that we too often find ourselves in. I'm convinced that most partnership or marriage problems would go away immediately if we could communicate with that level of transparency. But of course, in order to be able to communicate what it is that I want, need, and feel, I first have to know what that is. And this is, again, part of the responsibility of managing self and living as opposed to surviving. We get straight A's in survival skills. We know how to do that very well. But moving towards having a full and fulfilling life is something that scares us. And so, again, all roads lead back to self. All roads leads back to these ideas we have about what it is that we have a right to, but not necessarily all of the things that we have a responsibility to. So I have a responsibility every day to be connected to self, to have an awareness of what I want, need, and feel, to have an awareness of my choices and how they affect myself and others. And then I have the responsibility to communicate especially with people that depend on me or who are close to me, people that I depend on. And it's kind of an amazing thing to me, because when I do couples counseling, for example, the number one reason why people say that they're seeking couples counseling is quote-unquote communication issues. And what I'll notice is that the ways in which they communicate are increasingly without vulnerability. And as we maintain and build resentments with others, there's less and less vulnerability evident. And that's the real key to what makes communication so problematic. At its worst, we start stockpiling resentment, and the partnerships become increasingly toxic. And sadly, this is altogether too common, particularly for folks in recovery. I remind folks that what we know about partnerships, what we know about parenting, is primarily based on what we learned in our family of origin. And so one of the things that we tend to be unaware of is that we bring expectations to every partnership. And it's based most often on really unhealthy interactions. Many of us have an awareness that the way that we were raised and what we saw growing up was not healthy. And so our resolve is most often to do the exact opposite of what we grew up with. But again, if we're coming to any relationship with expectations, the most important thing to do is to communicate what those are. Because as my friends in 12-step fellowships say, having expectations is premeditated resentment. It is normal to come to have expectations. Whatever it is that people repeatedly do, we expect they'll continue to. However it is that we most often interact and relate to each other also becomes an expectation. But of course, all of these things are subconsciously driven and subconsciously maintained. When I've worked with people in recovery who seek mentors or sponsors or sober coaches, the most successful connections that I've seen are when two people sit down and say to each other right up front, here are the things that you can expect from me, and let me know what it is that you're hoping for or what it is that you might expect of me. When I serve people as a therapist or as a coach, my goal is to be transparent. I actually give people every opportunity not to work with me by saying, well, here are the things that I will do. Here is what my approach is, and if that's uncomfortable for you, that's totally okay. But these are things that you should know before agreeing to work with me. I will also then say, here are the things that I expect from you. And one of the biggest pieces of my expectation is willingness. I'm very happy to be patient and compassionate and empathic, but I also have an expectation that the things that we're pursuing, that we pursue them earnestly and fully. So I always respect it when somebody tells me that they're not ready to do something. That's very healthy to admit. The difficult question that follows is, what is it that you need in order to be ready? What are the changes that need to be made? What are the supports that you need to put in place? What is it that we're going to pursue that is a specific goal? And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why happiness is such a lousy goal. It's incredibly vague. It's undefined. We don't really have a sense of what it is. And so, of course, we don't have a sense of how it is that we'll get there. So my hope is that this creates an opportunity for you today. Step back and ask yourself, what are the goals that I'm working towards currently? And are they specific? Are they things that I can be held accountable for? Do they exist in different... tech problems. Do they exist in different areas of my life? Do I have adequate support for that? Do I have accountability for that? And do I have a plan for how I'm actually going to get from where I am to where I want to be? I always espouse the value of hard work, but I also equally espouse the value of having support and friends who are on the journey with you. Too often we set out to do great things, but we set out to do them alone. And again, it's because we're afraid of opening up, showing people who we really are, asking for what we need. There's also a whole host of opportunities as we continue to grow in our recovery. And what's amazing to me is that they're all very common sense things. They're all things that we know to do, but too often we don't do them. We all know that it's a good idea to put some money aside in a savings account for a rainy day or for when the car breaks down. But do we have the self-discipline to actually make those investments and follow through? We all know that having goals for our health is a good idea, but how many of us exercise routinely and how many of us just do it when we feel like it? We all know that hydration and nutrition and having good sleep patterns is a vital part of good health, but do we actually make the investment? For myself, one of the most difficult and counterintuitive things that I've done is get myself organized, which includes a whole lot of time management, a whole lot of scheduling, a whole lot of developing new routines and habits, because those are what allow me to most meaningfully reduce my stress in day-to-day life. They're also what help me to maximize my efforts. I still like to push limits. I still want to do great things. And what I've noticed is the more that I take care of the little things that tend to be so hard for us, those times where you forgot about an appointment, those times where your cell phone's dead, those times where you can't find your car keys. These are the little things in life that make things unmanageable, that lead to implosion and explosion. And so, again, because I'm not focused on happiness, I can be focused on things like meaningfully reducing stress in my daily life. So I hope that you're seeking those opportunities for yourself. I hope that you make some choices about each major part of your life. And my challenge to you in part would be to look at how are you fostering intimacy in your life today? What are the relationships that you're investing in? Who are the people that you are seeking investment from and who are investing in you? My hope is that you have specific goals that are broken down into steps and you have something that at least loosely resembles a plan. And then my other hope for you is that you have some dreams. Dreams to me are goals that you don't know if you can attain them. But it's maybe something that you work towards. Maybe it's something that You share your vision of what success would be for you with those who support you the most. And my experience is it's scary to have that type of vision, to have those dreams, but it also results in feeling more fully alive, and it's one of the greatest ways I know to move from surviving to living. Okay. Gonna do just a quick check of the streams. I very much welcome your comments always. And if you're watching the video after the fact, drop me a comment. Let me know what's going on with you. And I would especially love to hear from you topics that you'd like to have covered in future live streams. And of course, I always want to connect with you. The easiest way to do that, jim@sobernow.com. Drop me a quick email. Let me know if there's obstacles you're facing in your recovery and what kind of resources you need. By all means, drop by Sober Now's YouTube channel. A whole lot of videos there and live streams on topics we've covered in recovery from substance use disorder, but also in recovery from trauma and mental illness and all of the things that people like me tend to struggle with. Would, of course, also love to have you check out our website, sobernow.com. We're on a subscription service now, ridiculously affordable, less than $15 a month, gets you access to our home study programs that are go at your own pace, completely confidential, and ensure anonymity as well. The programs, there's two of them. The first one is for folks who are looking to enhance their recovery from substance use disorder. And the second program is for folks, affected others, people like me who have loved ones in active addiction, and exploring how do we manage the stress and the fear that come with having someone in active use. So looking at how we can respond as a family, how we respond within our community, because of course supporting recovery from substance use disorder is a community responsibility. So I hope that you're taking excellent care of yourself. I hope that you're making some investments, and I hope that you'll reach out to me if I can be helpful in your pursuits and your goals and dreams and recovery. Have a great day. I will look forward